Before we start, if you enjoy the story, please leave a like and check if you're subscribed. The pain arrived before consciousness, sharp and insistent behind his eyes. Declan Cross became aware of his body in fragments, cold metal beneath his shoulders, the acrid smell of sterilization chemicals, restraints biting into his wrists. His last clear memory was the explosion, the facility's reactor core erupting in white heat as he sprinted for the extraction point that never came. He forced his eyes open. Dim blue lighting washed across smooth walls that curved upward into darkness. His arms were locked at his sides on an angled platform, tilted just enough to keep him vulnerable without being overtly uncomfortable. The door dilated open with a whisper of pressurized air. She entered like winter given form, tall and impossibly graceful, her skin the color of deep ocean water caught in moonlight. Blue hair fell past her shoulders in a sleek cascade, and those eyes, luminous amber burning against blue, fixed on him with the intensity of a scientist examining a specimen. Pointed ears swept back from a face that would have been beautiful if not for the complete absence of warmth in her expression. "You are awake," she said, her voice carrying a melodic quality that contrasted with its clinical delivery. "Was I supposed to stay asleep for this part?" Declan asked, testing the restraints without appearing to struggle. She moved closer, circling the platform with measured steps. Her uniform hugged her frame like a second skin, matte black material that seemed to absorb light. "I am Ceres, primary interrogator for this sector. You will provide your designation, mission parameters, and command structure." "That's a lot of demands for someone who hasn't even offered me water," Declan said. Her eyes narrowed fractionally, the first crack in that perfect composure. She touched a device at her belt, and sensation flooded through him. Not pain exactly, but an invasive pressure behind his thoughts, like fingers rifling through his memories. "Your species' attachment to humor under duress is documented," Ceres said. "It serves as a deflection mechanism, ineffective against empathic analysis." The pressure intensified. Declan felt her presence in his mind, cool and probing, searching for the fear he absolutely felt. His training kicked in, compartmentalize, redirect, focus on something concrete. He fixed on her eyes, counted the striations of gold within the amber. Ceres tilted her head, her lips parted slightly. "You are redirecting," she said, curiosity bleeding into her tone before vanishing. "Am I, or am I just appreciating the view?" Her hand tightened on the device. The pressure in his mind spiked, and this time he couldn't suppress his reaction. A sharp intake of breath, muscles tensing. She leaned closer, studying his face. Fear, present but controlled, pain threshold elevated. Her free hand rose, hovering near his temple, but underneath, her fingers made contact with his skin, and everything changed. The sensation that flooded through their connection wasn't the clinical probe she'd initiated. It was raw, unfiltered. His memory of Sarah's laugh, the way sunlight caught her hair the morning before the invasion, the hollow ache of losing someone who made the world make sense. Love and loss tangled together. Ceres jerked back as if burned. The device clattered against the platform. She stood perfectly still, but her chest rose and fell with breaths that came too quick. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated. "What?" she started, then stopped. Her hand rose to her chest, pressing against her sternum. "What was that?" Declan watched her carefully. In all the intelligence briefings on Siltheri interrogation techniques, none had mentioned this. The interrogator thrown by her own methods. "You tell me, you're the one in my head." Ceres took a step back, then another. Her composure reassembled itself in visible stages. Shoulders straightening, breathing slowing, expression flattening. But her hands trembled as she retrieved the device. "The session is concluded. Subject requires extended observation." "Wait, do your people dream?" She froze mid-step. Seconds stretched between them, and he watched the subtle shifts in her posture, weight transferring, head tilting, fingers flexing against her thigh. "We do not require dreams," Ceres said finally, not turning around. "We evolved past such inefficiencies." "That's not what I asked." The door opened. She paused in the threshold, her profile silhouetted against the brighter corridor beyond. She left without another word. Declan counted to 300 after the door sealed. The restraints held firm, but his captors hadn't stripped him completely. The subcutaneous transmitter embedded along his ribs remained inactive. The virus was already in their systems, had been from the moment they'd scanned him during initial processing. Microscopic data fragments hidden in his genetic code. Every biometric scan fed it deeper into their network. In 72 hours, it would reach critical mass. The facility would tear itself apart from within. He just had to survive until activation, and avoid thinking about the hundreds of Siltheri personnel who would die. The interrogator with eyes like captured Starlight. The door opened again. She'd returned in less than an hour. "I have questions about the memory fragment," Sarah said, moving directly to the platform. She held no device this time. "The human you remembered, she was significant?" "She was everything." "Past tense. She is deceased?" "First week of the war, Shanghai." Cirrus stopped moving. She stood at his left side, close enough that he could smell something faintly floral from her hair. "You loved her," Cirrus said, the words sounding foreign in her mouth. "Yes. Yet you continue fighting. The loss did not break you." "It did break me. But humans don't stay broken. We put the pieces back together differently and keep going." "Illogical. Her preferences ceased to matter upon her death. The rational response would be to acknowledge the loss and move forward without the burden of her memory." "Is that what your people would do?" Cirrus's jaw tightened. "We do not form such attachments. Individual bonds create vulnerability." "Sounds lonely." "Loneliness is an emotion we do not experience." She stopped abruptly, her hand rising to her temple. Her pupils dilated again. "I should not be explaining this. You are deflecting again." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm curious about the woman who just accidentally let me see how curious she is about me." The words hung between them. Cirrus stared at him, and every tell screamed that she was experiencing something her species claimed they'd left behind. She reached out slowly and placed her palm flat against his chest. Her skin was cooler than human normal. Through the thin material of his shirt, he felt her fingers spread wide, and that invasive presence returned to his mind, but gentler this time, questioning rather than demanding. What flooded back wasn't a memory, but a sensation. Warmth spreading through his chest where her hand rested, awareness of her proximity, the elegant line of her throat. Attraction, primal and undeniable, cutting through the fear and pain and mission conditioning. Cirrus's breath caught audibly. Her hand remained pressed against him, and he felt her pulse accelerate where her wrist touched his sternum. Those luminous eyes locked with his, and for the first time since she'd entered, he saw genuine emotion, shock, confusion, and underneath it all, an answering heat that she clearly didn't understand. "This is not," she began, then faltered. Her hand lifted from his chest, but instead of pulling away, her fingers traced upward, feather-light against his collarbone, his throat, finally coming to rest against his jaw. Declan realized she was trembling. She leaned down slowly. Her hair fell forward, creating a curtain around them, and her face filled his vision. He could see the rapid flutter of her pulse at her throat, feel the warmth of her breath against his mouth. She jerked back as if struck, stumbling away from the platform. Her hand rose to her lips, touching them like she'd been burned. When she looked at him again, something wild moved behind her eyes. Not the cold analyst who'd entered hours before, but something raw and unguarded. "This cannot happen," Sarah said, but she didn't sound convinced. "I am your interrogator. You are my prisoner." "Then stop interrogating me, and maybe I'll stop answering questions you're not actually asking." She fled. This time there was no pretense of professional dismissal. She simply turned and ran for the door, her perfect composure shattered. Alone again, Declan closed his eyes and tried to calculate exactly how badly he'd just complicated his mission. The virus was already spreading. In 72 hours, this facility and everyone in it would die, including the woman who'd just looked at him like he'd handed her something precious and terrifying, something she'd never known she was missing. He triggered the subcutaneous transmitter. "Bishop, this is Cross. I'm in position. The package is delivered, but we have a problem." The transmitter couldn't receive, offered no comfort of a response. He was alone with his guilt and the ghost of sensation where her hand had rested against his chest. proof that sometimes the most dangerous weapons were the ones you never intended to deploy. Cirrus stood in her quarters, hands gripping the console edge. The trembling had stopped, but the phantom warmth remained where her palm had pressed against his chest. She pulled up the interrogation logs. Cross, Declan. Human. Age 32. Nothing that explained what had happened when their minds connected. Her people had abandoned emotion 3 centuries ago. The Great Reformation had deemed feelings inefficient, a liability, yet when she'd touched him, something had surged through her. Heat, hunger, a pull that transcended analysis. The door chimed. Overch Thaxis entered, his silver-tinted skin and cold gray eyes making the quarters feel smaller. Your report indicates extended observation. Explain. His mental conditioning is sophisticated. Standard probes produce incomplete results. 3 cycles, Thaxis said. Then we use chemical enhancement. He left. Cirrus released a held breath, 72 hours. She returned to the interrogation chamber an hour later. Declan's expression shifted when he saw her, a softening around his eyes. Back already? She placed both hands on either side of his head, fingers threading into his hair. The contact sent electricity up her arms. Tell me about your handler. Declan pushed back, opening a memory deliberately. A training facility, an instructor's voice. The person who cares most about protecting something? They're the most dangerous of all. You're showing me this intentionally. Why? What if you just asked instead of attacking? She withdrew her hands but stayed close. Why do you fight? You cannot win this war. Maybe not, but we can refuse to lose. That makes no sense. We're fighting because we care. Your people gave up the ability to care about anything except survival. Can you say you'd die for something you love? The words wouldn't come. She thought about his memory of the woman he'd loved, the richness her people's efficiency had never approached. I should be immune to your rhetoric. Then why are you still standing here? The alarm shrieked. Red emergency lighting cascaded across the walls. Human strike force detected. She looked at Declan, saw understanding flash across his face. You knew this was coming. I know my people don't leave operators behind. She moved to the door but paused. If the facility is breached, you will be executed immediately. Their eyes met. She didn't want him to die. The thought created a sensation in her chest that felt like falling. She fled. The battle lasted 18 minutes. The human ships retreated. She returned to find Declan still restrained, tension in his shoulders. Your rescue didn't come. No. When the alarm sounded, Declan said quietly, you looked afraid. For me. She couldn't deny it. What is happening to me? Since I touched your mind, I cannot stop thinking about. About what? She closed the distance, her hand rising to rest against his chest. His heart hammered beneath her palm. About this, about you. You are more than your function. My people would disagree. Then maybe your people are wrong. She leaned in slowly, her lips brushed against his, tentative, and sensation exploded through her, heat and hunger and something that felt like waking up. Declan made a sound low in his throat. The kiss deepened, her body pressing closer despite the restraints. His taste flooded her senses, and she wanted more. When she pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Her hands had tangled in his hair. This cannot happen. This violates every protocol. Then stop being my interrogator. If I withdraw, Thaxis will use chemical enhancement. He will destroy your mind. She stepped back, hand rising to her swollen lips. She looked at him, at the man who'd breached every defense she'd built. I will return tomorrow. Cirrus. She stopped at the sound of her name, the first time he'd used it. When did you last feel something just because you wanted to? She met his eyes. Never. 7 cycles had passed since their first kiss. Cirrus found reasons to extend each session, additional questions, deeper probes that yielded nothing but gave her hours in his presence. She entered the interrogation chamber carrying a medical scanner. Declan looked worse, skin pale, sweat beading his temples despite the cool air. You look terrible, she said. Flattery will get you everywhere. Cirrus ran the scanner over him, watching the readings spike into dangerous territory. The neural suppressors were toxic to human biology. You should have reported symptoms. To who? My captor? She met his eyes, saw the pain beneath the humor, something twisted in her chest. This is protocol violation, she murmured, but her hands were already moving across the controls. The suppressor field reduced to minimal levels. Declan gasped, his body sagging against the restraints. She caught him, her hands on his shoulders. Thank you, he breathed. She pressed her palm against his forehead, then his cheek, cataloging the heat. He leaned into her touch, eyes closing. When this is over, Declan said quietly, what happens to us? There is no us, you are my assignment. You keep saying that, he opened his eyes, but everything else about you says different. I have never done this before, felt this before. My training included no protocols for wanting someone? She nodded slowly. My people eliminated desire along with other emotions, but when I am near you, my body responds in ways I cannot control. I cannot stop thinking about touching you again. That's called attraction. It's normal. It is not normal for me. She cupped his face in both hands, studying him. His jaw was rough with several days' growth, his eyes bloodshot. He should have looked diminished. Instead, he looked at her like she was something precious. I have killed 17 sentients in service to my people, Sarah said. I have extracted intelligence that led to the deaths of hundreds more. And I would betray all of it to keep you alive. Declan stared at her. She kissed him before he could respond, pressing against him despite the restraints. Her hands slid down his chest, feeling the rapid hammer of his heart. He made a frustrated sound against her mouth. These restraints are killing me. You are still technically my prisoner. Technically, she pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I know what you are, Declan Cross. Ghost Protocol, the saboteurs sent on suicide missions, the ones who never expect extraction. His jaw tightened. That's classified. I know you volunteered for this mission. I know you were supposed to be expendable. Was supposed to be? You are not expendable to me. The facility's communication system crackled to life. Thaxes' voice filled the chamber. Interrogator Cirrus, report to command immediately. She stepped back reluctantly, smoothing her uniform. Be careful, Declan said. Command was a circular chamber dominated by holographic displays. Thaxes stood at the center, manipulating data streams. He didn't look at her when she entered. The human's interrogation has yielded minimal intelligence, yet you continue to request extended sessions. Explain this inconsistency. His conditioning requires... I reviewed your latest session logs. The empathic readings show elevated emotional response from both of you. Cirrus's pulse spiked, but she kept her face neutral. The readings I reference are yours, interrogator. Silence stretched between them. You have been compromised. You will be removed from the case immediately and remanded to psychological reconditioning. The human will be terminated within the hour. No. The word escaped sharp and absolute. Thaxes' eyes widened fractionally. You do not refuse directive. I am refusing this one. The human contains intelligence critical to ending this conflict. The human has revealed nothing of value. Give me 3 more cycles. Denied. Thaxes moved to the communication panel. Security, prepare the prisoner for termination protocol. Cirrus moved without thinking. Her hand shot out, striking the control interface hard enough to crack the screen. The system died with a spark. Thaxes turned slowly. You have committed treason against the Siltheri Collective. He drew his sidearm, raising the weapon toward her. The door exploded inward. Declan came through the smoke and debris, moving with brutal efficiency. He must have broken free when the suppressors were lowered. He drove his fist into Thaxes' wrist, sending the weapon clattering across the floor. They fought with savage intensity, Thaxes' superior strength against Declan's desperation. Cirrus grabbed the fallen weapon but couldn't get a clear shot. Thaxes got his hands around Declan's throat. Declan's face went red, then purple. Cirrus fired. The plasma bolt took Thaxes in the shoulder, spinning him away. He collapsed against the command console. You have chosen extinction over evolution. The collective will hunt you both. Then we will find unknown space, Saris said. She moved to Declan, who was gasping on the floor, and pulled him upright. Can you move? For you, anywhere. They ran. Saris led them through maintenance passages toward the docking bay. Alarms shrieked around them. There, she said, pointing to a small scout vessel. They reached the ship, and she overrode locks with her command codes. The hatch opened. Declan stumbled inside, and she followed, sealing them in. The cockpit was cramped. They pressed together as she worked the controls. Saris, Declan said quietly, before we do this, I need to tell you something. We do not have time. I wasn't captured by accident. Her hands froze above the controls. She turned to face him. Explain. My mission was sabotage. I carried a virus in my genetic code. Every scan fed it into your systems. In 92 minutes it activates. The reactor will destabilize. The facility will be destroyed. Saris stared at him, processing. He'd been a weapon from the beginning. But it can be stopped. I changed the activation parameters during our sessions. I couldn't complete a mission that would kill you. The virus is dormant. It needs a trigger command I never sent. You compromised your mission for me. Yes. We are both traitors now. Yes. Saris kissed him hard. When she pulled back, his eyes were bright. The virus, can it be repurposed? What do you mean? Her hands moved across the controls, pulling up the network architecture. Your people designed it to destroy. But what if we modified it? Used it not as a weapon, but as a bridge, to let your people experience how we think, and my people experience how you feel. Declan's eyes widened. Forced empathy. Temporary. 48 hours at most, but long enough for both sides to understand what they are fighting. That's brilliant or insane. Do you have the access codes? Yes, but we would need to broadcast it simultaneously to both military networks. If only one side experiences it, they will see it as an attack. Then we broadcast to both. They worked together, combining Siltheri technology with human ingenuity. Declan pulled the activation sequences from his memories. She rewrote the viral architecture, transforming destruction into communication. If this works, Declan said, we will be wanted by both governments. If this works, we will have given them something more important than victory. We will have given them choice. She keyed the final sequence. The modified virus propagated through the systems, spreading faster than any countermeasure could stop it. Within minutes, it would be transmitted across both military networks. It is done. Declan's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing. We need to leave now. She piloted the scout vessel out of the docking bay. Weapons fire scorched their hull, but the small ship was fast. They shot through the defensive perimeter and into open space. What happens now? Declan asked. Now we wait to see if understanding is stronger than fear. And if it is not, she turned to look at him fully. Then we find our own path together. Declan pulled her closer, and she went willingly, fitting herself against him. His arms wrapped around her, warm and solid, and she felt his heartbeat against her chest. Proof of life, proof of choice. Behind them, across thousands of light-years of space, the virus began its work. The scout vessel shuddered as plasma fire grazed their port shield. Saris's hands flew across the navigation controls, threading them through a debris field. Behind them, 2 Siltheri interceptors maintained pursuit. They're not giving up, Declan said from the co-pilot's seat. They will not. We have committed the highest treason. Another blast rocked the ship. The shields flickered, warning indicators lighting up. There, Declan pointed to a cluster of asteroids ahead. If we can lose them in there. The field is too dense. Collision probability exceeds. I'm not asking for probability. I'm asking if you trust me. Saris met his eyes. Trust. Another concept her people had eliminated as inefficient. Yes. Then give me helm control. She transferred systems to his station. Declan dove them into the chaos, rolling the ship to slip between colliding fragments. The Siltheri interceptors followed, but one clipped an asteroid and spun out. The other pulled back. Declan brought them through the far side, the ship intact. Human pilots, Sarah said, her voice unsteady. You train for this? We train to survive when the odds say we shouldn't. The communication system activated, raw data flooding their receivers, fragmentary reports from across the war zone. Ceasefires, Sarah said, staring at the data stream. Spontaneous across 17 sectors, ships holding position, weapons offline. Same on the human side, Declan confirmed. Siltheri commanders reporting emotional responses, human officers reporting mathematical clarity. The virus is working. There's something else. Both sides have identified us as the source. The communication system chimed. Thaxus's face appeared on the display, his shoulder bandaged. Interrogator Cirrus, you have 48 hours to surrender yourselves for judgment. Both governments have agreed to make you a joint target. The first cooperative action of this forced peace will be hunting you down. The transmission ended. Well, Declan said, at least we got them to cooperate on something. Cirrus stared at the empty display, processing the weight of exile. Declan's hand covered hers on the console. We knew this was coming. The moment we chose each other over orders, we knew. Knowing and experiencing are different things. Yeah, they are, he shifted closer, but I meant what I said. For you, anywhere. Even if anywhere means spending our lives running. Especially then, because we'll be running together. She kissed him, needing the contact. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. I do not regret this. I would sacrifice it all again. That's called love, in case you were wondering. Love, the word felt right, like a puzzle piece sliding into place. Then I love you, is that how it is expressed? That's exactly how it's expressed. The ship's proximity alerts chimed. A station ahead, massive and jury-rigged, the neutral zone where smugglers and refugees found temporary haven. We need supplies, Sarah said. This vessel was designed for short-range reconnaissance, not extended travel. She guided them into the docking queue. The station was chaos. Species from across the galaxy mixing in ways that would never happen in regulated space. They found a supply depot run by a four-armed merchant who asked no questions. Saris purchased food, medical supplies, and upgraded power cells. Declan acquired false identification documents from a forger. We're officially dead, he said, both listed as casualties in the facility's destruction. They found a small room to rent, barely large enough for the narrow bed. Saris sealed the door and engaged every security protocol. Declan sat on the edge of the bed, wincing as his bruised ribs protested. She moved to him immediately. Let me see. He pulled off his shirt, revealing purple-black bruising across his ribs, burns from plasma fire, cuts from the escape. Cirrus's fingers traced the injuries carefully. But as she worked, awareness shifted. The clinical evaluation became something else. Consciousness of his skin under her hands, the way his breathing changed when she touched certain places. Cirrus, Declan said, his voice rough. She looked up, found him watching her with intensity. Your injuries require treatment. They can wait. That is medically inadvisable. I don't care. He pulled her down to him, and she went willingly, their mouths meeting with building urgency. His hands found the fastenings of her uniform, and she helped him, needing the barriers gone. When they finally pressed together without barriers, the sensation overwhelmed her. Every nerve ending fired, pleasure cascading through her in waves. Declan's hands mapped her body with reverent attention, learning what made her gasp, what made her arch into his touch. She explored him with equal fascination, the differences between their species, the similarities that mattered more, the way his pulse jumped under her fingers, the sounds he made when she touched him certain ways. Is this, she started, then lost the words as his mouth found the curve of her neck. This is us, Declan finished. No missions, no protocols, just us. Just us, she repeated. They moved together, learning each other's rhythms, building toward something that transcended physical pleasure. When the peak came, Saris felt their minds connect without empathic interface. Just the raw force of emotion binding them together. Afterward, they lay tangled in the narrow bed, her blue skin against his. Declan traced patterns on her shoulder. What happens now, she asked. Now we figure out how to live when everyone wants us dead. The virus gave both sides 48 hours of understanding. After that, the biological buffers will reset. That's a big window for things to go wrong. But possible that the experience changes them permanently. We have proven that Siltheri can feel, that humans can think with perfect logic. Perhaps some will choose to maintain those abilities. And if they don't? Cirrus considered the question, running projections. But beneath the logic, she felt something else. Hope. Then we become proof that the bridge can be crossed, that logic and emotion are not mutually exclusive, that two people from opposite sides can choose each other and build something new. That's a lot of pressure for two people on the run. We have already changed the galaxy. What is a little more pressure? Declan laughed, the sound warm against her skin. She felt his amusement resonate through her, realized she was experiencing happiness. The communication device chimed. Cirrus reached for it, scanning the message. The ceasefires are holding. No reports of renewed fighting in any sector. Give it time. Fear is stronger than understanding for a lot of people. Then we will show them understanding can be stronger than fear. How? She looked at him, this human who had taught her that becoming more didn't mean abandoning who you were. By surviving, by refusing to let either side turn us into villains, by proving that the space between our species is not a void, but a bridge to build. That's a hell of a mission statement. It is the only mission that matters now. Declan pulled her closer, and she settled against him, feeling his heartbeat beneath her palm. Outside, the galaxy turned, two species experiencing each other's minds for the first time, and the consequences of what they had done rippled outward. They had 48 hours before the empathic bridge collapsed, 48 hours to hope that understanding would prove stronger than fear. And if it didn't, if the war resumed and both sides hunted them, at least they would face it together, two traitors who had chosen love over duty and each other over everything else. 6 months had passed since the virus changed everything. Declan stood at the viewport of their salvaged freighter, watching the Rim-world colony below. The planet had no name in any official database, just coordinates that smugglers and exiles used when they needed to disappear. Cirrus entered carrying a data tablet, her expression troubled. The galactic news feeds, the peace talks are collapsing. Declan took the tablet, scanning the reports. 6 months of tentative ceasefire, but the biological buffers had reset as predicted, and memory of what they'd experienced faded like a dream upon waking. They're calling for our extradition. Both governments, they say we manipulated them. We gave them a choice, they're choosing to forget. Not all of them. She pulled up another file. There are groups on both sides. Humans practicing Siltheri meditation techniques, Siltheri deliberately stimulating their suppressed emotional centers. Small numbers, but growing. Declan studied the data, scattered cells across dozens of worlds, people who remembered what the virus had shown them and refused to let it go. It is not enough, Cirrus said quietly. Within weeks, the fighting will resume. Then we need to give them another push. We cannot release the virus again. Both militaries have implemented countermeasures. What if we didn't use the virus? What if we used ourselves? We're proof that the bridge works. What if we transmitted our story? Put ourselves out there as evidence that understanding is achievable. They would capture us. Only if they can find us. But what if we transmitted simultaneously to both networks? By the time they traced the signal, we'd be gone. Cirrus moved closer, her hands finding his. You are proposing we make ourselves targets to save people who want us dead. I'm proposing we finish what we started. We gave them forced empathy. Now we give them a choice. She studied his face with that brilliant, analytical mind. The probability of success is low. But some will listen, that's all we need. It will not stop the war. Maybe not, but it might plant seeds that grow into something that does. Cirrus pulled him closer, her forehead resting against his. You are asking me to risk everything again. I'm asking if you still believe understanding can be stronger than fear. I believe it because I live it. Every day with you proves it. Then let's prove it to everyone else. They spent the next week preparing. Declan scripted their story while Saris built the transmission architecture, a distributed broadcast that would simultaneously hit military channels and civilian networks across both territories. The recording took place in their small quarters. No elaborate production, just the two of them side by side, telling the truth. Declan spoke first, his hand clasped with Saris's. My name is Declan Cross. 6 months ago, I was captured during a sabotage mission. I was supposed to die completing that mission. Instead, I met someone who changed everything. Saris continued, her voice steady. I am Saris, formerly primary interrogator for Siltheri military intelligence. I was taught that emotion was weakness. Then I encountered a human who showed me I was wrong. They told their story. The interrogation sessions, the growing connection, the moment they chose each other over duty. They explained the virus as a desperate attempt to build understanding. We are hunted by both our peoples, Declan said toward the end, branded as traitors, marked for execution, but we would make the same choices again. That logic and emotion are not opposites, Saris finished. They are complementary halves of a whole. Choosing someone across the divide does not make us weaker. It makes us something neither species could achieve alone. The recording ended with them simply looking at each other. Just two people who had found something worth fighting for. They transmitted it simultaneously across both networks. Within minutes, it had reached millions, within hours, billions. The responses came quickly. Some were exactly what they'd expected. Calls for their capture, denunciations from military leadership. But others were different. A Siltheri scientist published research showing that emotional capacity could be deliberately reactivated. A human philosopher wrote an essay arguing that pure logic without empathy had led humanity to the brink of extinction. Soldiers on both sides began communicating through unauthorized channels, trying to recapture what they'd felt during the 48 hours. The movement grew slowly, like water finding cracks in stone. 3 weeks after the broadcast, Saris intercepted a coded transmission. It is from a group calling themselves the Bridge Initiative. They claim to have members on both sides. They want to meet with us. It could be a trap. It could be, or it could be proof that we succeeded. Should we go? He looked at her, this woman who had given up everything for him. We started this by taking a risk. Seems fitting to continue the same way. They arrived at the neutral station 3 days later. 7 figures waited, 3 humans, 4 Siltheri. All wore civilian clothing. One of the humans, a woman with gray-streaked hair, stepped forward. Commander Cross, Interrogator Saris, I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez. We're scientists, philosophers, former military, people who experienced the 48 hours and refused to forget. One of the Siltheri stepped forward, a male with darker blue skin, striking green eyes. I am Kavros. During the Empathic bridge, I experienced human grief for the first time. It showed me what my people surrendered when we eliminated emotion. I have been working to reclaim it ever since. Others shared their stories, people who'd looked across the divide during the empathy window and seen not enemies, but people. There are thousands of us now, Vasquez said. Scattered across both territories, we're calling ourselves the Bridge Initiative because of what you two represent. What do you want from us? Saris asked. Leadership. You started this. Help us finish it. Declan felt Saris's hand tighten in his. We're not leaders. We're just two people who refuse to be what everyone expected. That's exactly why it has to be you. You chose each other despite everything that said you shouldn't. Saris looked at Declan and he saw the question in her eyes. He squeezed her hand. What exactly are you proposing? What followed was hours of planning. The Bridge Initiative had resources, safe houses, communication networks, funding from anonymous donors. They wanted to establish neutral zones where humans and Siltheri could meet openly. They wanted to push for formal recognition of cross-species relationships. The governments will fight this, Declan warned. They already are, but we have something they don't, proof that it works, you two. The meeting ended with a plan. Saris and Declan would remain in hiding but connected to the initiative's network. They'd provide guidance, help others navigate the challenges of crossing the divide between species. It wasn't the grand revolution Declan had imagined. It was smaller, more personal, one relationship at a time, one choice to understand rather than fear. As they returned to their freighter, Saris turned to him. "Do you think it will work?" "I think it already is working. 6 months ago, there were 2 people willing to cross the bridge. Now there are thousands." "It is not everything. The war continues." "Yeah, but change doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments, in individual choices, like a Siltheri interrogator deciding not to break her prisoner." She smiled, that expression that still sent warmth through his chest. "When did you become a philosopher?" "When I fell in love with someone who taught me to think beyond the mission." They returned to their quarters. Saris pulled up the galactic news feeds. The war continued, but the narrative was shifting. More stories about the Bridge Initiative, more reports of humans and Siltheri working together. The change was slow, incremental, but it was real. Declan wrapped his arms around Saris from behind. "We did something impossible. We crossed a bridge everyone said couldn't exist. And now others are following. Think that makes us heroes or criminals?" "Both. Neither. Does it matter?" "Not even a little." She turned in his arms, her hands coming up to frame his face. "I love you," Saris said, in defiance of logic, in contradiction to my conditioning, in full awareness of the consequences. "I love you." "I love you too, and I'd choose you again over everything else." They kissed, and in that moment, the war and the governments and the entire galaxy faded. What mattered was this: 2 people from opposite sides of an evolutionary divide who had found each other and refused to let go. Outside, across thousands of light years of space, others were making similar choices. Humans reaching across the divide towards Siltheri. Siltheri opening themselves to emotions they'd suppressed for centuries. Individual bridges being built, one person at a time. The virus had given both species 48 hours of forced understanding. Saris and Declan had given them proof that understanding could be chosen, cultivated, built into something lasting. The war would end eventually, not through conquest or surrender, but through the accumulation of individual choices to see each other as something more than enemies. And it all started with a captive and his interrogator, with a question asked in curiosity rather than hostility, with a choice to connect rather than conquer. The galaxy was changing because 2 people refused to be what they were supposed to be.